This is the end of the video. We'll get started in 10 to 15 minutes. Hi, I'm Scott Ott with Bill Whittle now. And Bill, interesting story coming to us from the New York Post that NASA has discovered the possibility of a parallel universe where time runs backwards. Now, it's kind of complicated how they discovered this, but essentially they're floating this radio signal detector above the Antarctic. And I'll give you the mystical paragraph that the Post has. The experts use a giant balloon to carry NASA's Antarctic Impulsive Transient antenna, they dub ANITA, high above the Antarctic, where the frigid dry air provides a perfect environment with little to no radio noise to distort the findings. Apparently, the Earth is constantly being bombarded by high-energy particles that are constantly arriving from outer space. Some of the low-energy subatomic neutrinos actually pass right through the Earth because they have zero mass. However, high-energy objects are stopped by the planet's mass. But the problem is therefore, all the heavy particles, all the high energy particles are coming down from space, except for something they discovered, which are something they call tau neutrinos, which come up out of the Earth. Now, the finding implies that these particles are actually traveling backward in time, suggesting evidence of a parallel universe. And believe it or not, Bill, that's what they said is the simplest explanation.
Damn you, tau neutrinos. Get off of my lawn. Get off of my vast Antarctic lawn.
Now, I bring this up to you because I know you're a big science fiction fan and an amateur, and by that I mean lover of science and all things space. How does this strike you at first hearing?
I think it's confirmation, or, well, let me rephrase that. It's another piece of evidence in a belief that I think has been seriously backed by mathematics and advanced physics, and it's not a science fiction idea. Parenthetically, I started teaching astronomy in the Miami Planetarium when I was 14, I think. So I've been in this field for a while now. When you look at cosmology, you look at advanced physics, you look at physics on the quantum level, right at the outer boundaries of things that are as far away from our day-to-day existence as you can get, things start to fray a little bit. And I think this is really important to have this understood in the beginning. So I'm just gonna get this said, because some of the stuff that we're going to talk about briefly is very, very difficult to understand. There is a limit to what we can understand as human beings, what we can really understand. What we can hypothesize is virtually unlimited. There's some pretty compelling evidence that we live in an 11-dimensional universe, and that all of it is tied up in these strings in this cosmic string theory and all the rest. And I don't mean this to sound anti-human, to the extreme contrary. I'm exceedingly proud of the human race. I'm exceedingly proud to be a member of them, and I'm exceedingly proud that a bunch of upright chimps basically can figure out so much about the way the universe is built. Nevertheless, and this is the important point, there comes a limit, and I call it the horsepower limit. There is a limit to how much our brains are able to process that is determined by the number of neurons, and that's it. In other words, I could take a hamster and train it to fly an instrument approach as many times as I could take lifetimes of generations of hamsters, or chimps for that matter. Chimp's a better example. I could take a chimpanzee into an airplane and try to train it how to fly an instrument approach, and it doesn't matter how long I try, and it doesn't matter how good I am as an instructor. The chimp doesn't have the mental horsepower to be able to do that particular task. And likewise, there are elements of the things that we're able to imagine and model that seem so contradictory and so impossible that I have described it as we have run up against the horsepower limit of our own brains to understand it. Now, eternity is one of those things. Infinity is something else. We both know what eternity and infinity means, but we can't conceive of them. We always think that infinity means, well, it's huge. Yes, it's huge, all right. Well, what's on the other end of the huge? Nothing. There is no other end. Well, what do you mean? Well, there's nothing on the other end. It just keeps going forever. But it's got to stop someplace. When you talk about the expanding universe, stay with me, folks. You talk about the universe expanding from the Big Bang, and our brains are determined to think, okay, so the whole universe is inside this bubble, right? Yes, absolutely, you've got it. What's on the other side of the bubble? Nothing. What, you mean like empty space? No, nothing. There's nothing on the other side of the bubble. Vacuum? No, you don't understand. There is nothing on the other side of the bubble. There's nothing. There is no existence there. And this is where the horsepower restrictions come in and allow us to talk about things in forms of models, but not really be able to comprehend them in a real way. All is to say that of all the mysteries in physics, as you get closer to the boundaries in quantum and in supergravity and all the rest of it, the one thing that seems to be a consistent problem is time. Time continually gets in the way of a clear understanding of things. And we have known for quite a long time that there's a particle called a positron. It's a positively charged electron. You can think of it as a positively charged electron, or you can think of it as an electron that's moving backwards in time. And this seems impossible to us because we're running into our horsepower limitations. But to give you a conclusion of what I personally think, based on a lot of scientific evidence, I think that you make a very strong case that the universe is constructed, and this is, again, the best way I can explain this to fellow chimps. It is a construct. It's physically built, and time is simply a passage through this construct. Now, we are limited in our perception to being able to see only in one direction, but it's all equally real. So if I were to hand you an old LP, or a cassette tape for that matter, or whatever else these crazy nutty kids are using, an LP is a good example. If I hand you a Frank Sinatra record, and I ask you what part of that record is more real, you would say that's an absurd statement. You'd question my sanity. But if I played the record, if I put the needle on the groove and played the record, you would be hearing Frank Sinatra. You'd know that there's lyrics coming up, and you know that there's lyrics behind, but you can't experience those because they're outside the realms of our ability. If you've never heard the album before, you have no idea what's coming. That record is constructed, but the consciousness of ours is limited to what the groove is on at that particular time. So all of that to simply say that the entire idea of something running backwards in time is not necessarily proof of another universe so much as it's proof of the universe that exists and access to moving through that universe in directions that we don't have access to move in.
It's interesting. As you were speaking, Bill, I thought of the scripture that says, with the Lord, a day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as a day.
Yes.
Let's just put a button on this for this episode by talking about the implications. Let's say that this simplest explanation for high energy heavy particles coming up from the Earth is actually that there's a parallel universe and their time runs backwards. What, if any, implications are there for us humanoid chimps? In addition, I thought one of the most interesting questions that rose in this article was the possibility that if there are beings in the parallel universe, they would perceive that we are running backward in time.
Of course, and there's no objective way to know. There's a particularly fascinating literary example of this, and that's Merlin in the King Arthur legends. Merlin was living life backwards. He was born old and getting younger as the story went on. That's why he could see the future. The future for Arthur was the past for Merlin. Since it's such an interesting topic, to say that these particles are coming out of the Earth is not to me to say that there's an alternate universe. It's just that something is moving backwards along the same groove of this record. There could be infinite number of alternate universes, but in any event, what this does for me, and what I would hope it would do for many people, is to make you realize that when people make statements with certainty about things of this nature, there's a great deal of arrogance involved, and I ought to know because I was certainly one of those people. I thought, what's so hard to understand? Big Bang, chemicals, here's amino acids and pass some lightning through the atmosphere of Jupiter and out trickles these amino acids, the building blocks of life, and so on and so on and so on. And it's very easy to look at this as a very simple thing. But what we're really doing when we do that is we're saying that the tiny, tiny, tiny piece of reality that we're able to glimpse through the cocktail straw, a four-dimensional universe that we live in. We live in a four-dimensional universe, by the way. If I have a cube, it's got 4 dimensions. You think it's got 3, but it doesn't. It has 4. It has height, it has depth, it has width, and it has duration. It exists through time. When you get to these levels of things, it should fill you with strangely shouldn't do anything. Here's what it does for me. It fills me with very, very interesting conflict of emotions. On one hand, it makes me enormously humble to realize how much of reality is so far complex beyond our ability to perceive it, that any certainty about the situation that we live in is a certainty about such a infinitesimally small slice of the complexity of what's really out there. So that's a very humbling feeling. And precisely opposite, I'm filled with boundless pride. I mean, genuine, honest to God, thumbs in the suspenders kind of pride that we as a species, using a cantaloupe-sized, volume of gray jelly, are able to mathematically and logically and through limited experiments, very precise little tiny little holes we punch in the universe, that we are able to construct models that represent what the universe is actually doing in a way that allows us to understand things that are so far beyond our ability to perceive with our senses, the ability of our mind to and building, as Newton said, if I see so far, it's only because I stand on the shoulders of giants. The ability of this species to use its imagination and its logic and its determination to know things, and to slowly, over centuries and centuries, build an ever more complex model of what is really going on out there. The map is not the territory. If I hold up a road map of Texas, you can say that's Texas, and it's a useful map in some ways if you want to go from one part of Texas to another. But a map of Texas isn't Texas. Texas is composed of trillions and trillions of little tiny little dust particles and little insects under the ground, and every single leaf and all of the trees, all of that's Texas. The map is not Texas. The territory, the map is not the territory, but it's a useful way to get around. And this just confirms once again that we really are a really remarkable bunch of ground-walking tree apes. And I think we deserve a lot better than many people give us credit for these days.
Well, we've come to the start of this video, and we want to thank the members at BillWhittle.com who sometime in the future decided that they would give financial support to this enterprise, and that has enabled us to do this. If you have not yet in the past become a member, but would like to in the past, I don't know even how to state this,
but push the button.
Go and click the big green button at BillWhittle.com.
Or unpush it, whatever. Just interact with the button.
Talk into the machine, whatever you need to do, but go to BillWhittle.com and click that Become a Member button. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks for watching.